Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm Steven Conway. With me, as always, is Jeremy Finestone. We have a special guest. We're going to introduce him in just a moment. We're thrilled to have him here. But we're kind of coming off of a high. We just watched Windy City Riot. This is our special edition coming up after this big show we had from Chicago in front of a large and pretty responsive crowd to everything. And Jeremy, I think we watched one of the better shows from New Japan that we've had in a long time. This New Beginning in Osaka was an incredible show. They've had other good shows to the year. This one was fantastic. I've had a blast, and I'm excited to talk about it.
I got to be honest with you. The metrics are, was it a good show, and did I like it? And the answer is yes on both of those. So that's where I stand on it. Total thumbs up.
So go ahead and introduce our guest, and let's find out what he thought.
All right, we got Josh from WeWorkStiff. Does everyone know who Josh from WeWorkStiff is? If you don't, I've got a primer for you. So let's get this ready to go.
Let's do it.
Oh, man, let's get the pages going here. I can't get the pages going for whatever reason, so we're going to not do that. But I had some slides here that had some examples of the things that Josh does. He's got a podcast with his Australian lads, the WeWorkStiff podcast. They do long-form storytelling recaps of the New Japan product and have done so for a significantly longer period of time than we have, to be frankly speaking. And they are very good at it. They did a podcast at the end of the year previewing Wrestle Kingdom, and they graciously invited me on. And I've been looking for an opportunity to bring Josh on as well so that we could collaborate together. And this is the opportunity. Hi, Josh. How are you?
Hey, fellas. I am good. Thank you for having me. As mentioned, I run a narrative character and storytelling podcast, New Japan Pro Wrestling character and storytelling podcast. Myself and my co-host Dave, WeWorkStiff. You can find us at WeWorkStiff. The Stiff.club is also where you can find us. We're a niche of niche kind of podcast, and storytelling obviously has a pretty I won't say bad rap, but I'd say it's somewhat divisive in the pro wrestling discourse. But we try our best to sort of explore New Japan through the lens that we have always viewed it. And we've been really happy to find so many people that have also really, even if they don't engage with New Japan through the same lens, they will be sort of open and gracious to have discussions around New Japan Pro Wrestling that way. So I'm really excited to come onto the show here and have a chance to talk with you fellas, because off the back of that show, I think there's a lot of stuff we can dive into and give a bit of an example of the type of stuff that we do, and I think hopefully add some diverse discussion for your show as well. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, you actually put out a show earlier today or yesterday, and it was a fantastic preview of the entire show. It went about 3 hours, and I'm really glad I listened to it after it, because I would have been worried that some of the things that I was thinking would have been suggested by you, and I was like, nope, we've came to it independently, and I'm feeling really good about it. But just a fantastic podcast, and they also have the subscription. I'm personally a member of that subscription service as well. I'm looking forward to getting into that. Just plenty of recommendations for their thing. They also super creative with their cover art for all their shows. Just grabbed a couple here.
That's great stuff. Oh, there you go. Oh, yes.
And I had to make sure everyone saw the effort that they put into when they produce a podcast. You do every 2 weeks, correct?
Every week.
Every week. You are every week. So the work that they put in, they kind of put us to shame with the PR and the graphics and all that. We put some audio off a video. We go live. We do it live, pal.
Hey.
And man, the work that they put into this, I can't say enough good things about it.
Thank you very much. I can't believe I'm going live here. Normally I have the benefit of extensive editing, which does allow me to kind of shape and frame the way that my takes come off. We just like doing the stuff that we like doing. That's ultimately what this is about, is we love New Japan Pro Wrestling, and any chance to create off the back of it. Yeah, we're always more than happy to do it. So chance to do it now live with you fellas. So I'm excited.
And this is good paid promotion, but if you want their current shirt, That's their current shirt right
Yeah,
there.
the Stiff.Club, yes. Wayne's World mashup.
Yeah, there's a Wayne's World says Storytime Excellent on it for the people that are listening to this later as a podcast. It's pretty good.
And we did get a "We're not worthy" chant at one point during the show, so I thought it all tied together.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, Steven, why don't you take this underway? Get us underway.
I'm Steven.
I got all crossed up right there, and then I'm just like, well, crap, I just got to own it.
Sorry, we've only done 100 episodes. You'll get my name by 200, I think, but we'll be all right. So we had this show today, and look, like I mentioned, terrific show. A couple of storylines ended. One storyline that I'm really hoping ended that we're not totally sure on. Another, some things began, and still more storylines just kind of continued on and set up some things for resurgence. A lot going on in this one to talk about. The main thing, of course, is that we do have a new IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. Jon Moxley did indeed defeat Tetsuya Naito, and we had long talks on this show about how this was very possible. That look at the way the schedule is set up, the way the year was developing, that this was something they could absolutely do. They could make Jon Moxley the IWGP champion, and there's also some points to be made about Tetsuya Naito holding that title as well. And so it made for an intriguing main event because you didn't really feel like you knew. You know, you had your feelings and you had your opinions on it, but you couldn't be sure as to what they were going to do here. Jon Moxley did indeed win it. And Chris Amps is joining us here. He was there live at the Wintrust Arena. He says, thanks for keeping me entertained on my drive home. Happy to. Chris, I'm glad you're with us. The show itself, we're going to break down here, but Moxley is the champion. And we'll talk about the angle afterwards. We already have a match coming up for him at Resurgence, but for me, Jeremy, we talked about this, that look at things, Resurgence, Forbidden Door, possibly Dontaku, but not necessarily. Dominion. These are all dates that Moxley can make. And, you know, you don't necessarily have to have the World Heavyweight Champion around all the time. Super Juniors is coming. You know, he doesn't have to be there full time. If you're going to do it, this would be the time. And you could do it with this guy who is a legitimate headliner in Japan. You know, this guy works in Japan as well as in the United States. They went with it. It was a terrific match, and I'm excited to see where they go with it, although we already have a good idea.
You know, the work and the investment that they put into Jon Moxley over the last 5 years, not allowing anyone to have a pinfall on him, all the different pushes that he's had when he has made New Japan a priority for them. It seems like it's just been a match made in heaven for this entire time. And so when we get to this match, this Naito and Moxley match, and it's clear when we're watching it that both men are clearly motivated to have this match for whatever reason that may be. And it just puts a shine back on the IWGP title scene, even if on the outside, someone will look at the contenders and be like, Ren and Shota, okay, but there's reasons for that. And if you have, if you've been following the product or you're wanting to get into the product, the explanations will be laid bare if they aren't already there. So that's kind of where I'm at. As I'm feeling like the momentum towards elevating the next generation of talent is there. And they have many different avenues that they can go with Moxley and the two that they decided to spotlight.
I thought it was interesting here from War Hero 99 mentions one other thing. This is not really apropos of much of anything, but he says, I bet Rollins, Reigns, and the BC are all happy. It was because of the thing that happened this past weekend with Cody Rhodes winning the WWE Universal title, is that for the first time since 2020, I think it was, none of the Shield held a belt. Like that was a thing that had gone on for a long, long time. And now, it only lasted 6 days.
I remember that tweet went down. I'm like, start the clock, bro. That lasted a while.
It's got to happen. But yeah, Josh, when you looked at this and you saw did you see the same things we did where the schedule was just like, oh, this could be the one. You could do the title change here.
Yeah, I think beginning, in the early stages where there was the potential of Mox, when this was announced, I was quite lukewarm on the prospect of, another sort of, ostensibly outsider winning a top belt. Just from, we've been hurt in the past in relation to that. But as it sort of drew closer off the back of Sakura Genesis, this past week, I began to sort of switch up and start thinking this was not only a real possibility, but perhaps the wise move, given where Naito is at in terms of what his responsibilities are likely going to be in terms of ushering in the new generation. That he could perhaps carry the load. Mox could help with that by taking a bit of the pressure off in the short term. Because Naito needs to be protected from himself. That's his biggest enemy, really. Is he? And we saw it in the match. This man is willing to do pretty much anything for New Japan. So I think, as the schedule lined up, the direction, it made sense. And that video package that they put out on YouTube, when that came out, and I saw that I was like, yeah, well, that's it. He's winning. It really told the story quite well, and it sets up. We're in uncharted territory in a lot of respects in relation to this because, as you mentioned, all those shows are there. Dontaku's there. I know that there's another one, but I think New Japan Soul was announced between after Dominion, but before G1. So there are so many variables now that we hadn't previously anticipated. I'm very intrigued as to where this will go. So it was a shot in the arm in a lot of respects.
Yeah, it's funny we mentioned that about Tetsuya Naito willing to do anything for New Japan. It's absolutely true, and you see it time after time. His character is such that I don't care about New Japan, of course, but no one cares more. No one in that company cares more. It's so critical to him. And he was dude was landing on his head. He was he really does need to be saved from himself sometimes. And you can see that this is a man who has a lot of miles on that body.
We got ungovernable last week, and we got head drop Naito this week. So we're great.
I was thinking about it, and I was watching this match, right? And I saw a motivated Naito in a way that I really didn't see in the Yota Tsuji match. I was arguing with Steven that I felt like there was something missing, like a charisma or a vibe that just kind of wasn't there. And then when I watched this match with Moxley, I was like, oh, it definitely wasn't there. Something was missing in that match because this had an electricity to it. And I felt particularly that Naito had a lot of electricity to him. And I had wondered, this is the first new opponent that this guy has had outside of the same 10 or 12 guys since the end of the G1. Since he's had the feud with Sonata and just 5 guys. And with the brief interlude of like a House of Torture, I think. This is the first fresh thing that he's had in a while. And boy, did it show when he was just like, yeah, this is new. This is fresh. I got something going on in the main event in the middle of Chicago. And it worked for me personally.
Yeah, I thought it was terrific. And so it capped off what ended up being a great night. So we've mentioned a couple things that happened after the main event. So I think it's time we back up a little bit and walk through this show because the show was very linear. I really enjoyed how one thing led to the next in this, and it happened several times. The first one was the Strong Survivor match, Matt Vandegrift and Zane J. These are a couple of the NJPW dojo guys, the LA dojo guys there. And Zane J, it was fine. Vandegrift had hit the Styles Clash for the win, which works because he basically has AJ Styles' hair, or is at least attempting to. And, Vandegrift is more athletic than he looks, but that's kind of a low bar to jump over because when he comes out there, he just doesn't look particularly athletic at all. But this match was fine. I mean, it's an opening match. It's a prelim match between some of the guys from the dojo. It did its job, I suppose. Vandegrift won, and so I guess he'll be on the next one as well. Still the Strong Survivor against somebody else in the opener.
It's the opportunity match for both guys. Zane J, I thought, looked better than Vandegrift, but I figured that's because they're just letting him show off with Vandegrift winning. There's something about Vandegrift that I feel like he's channeling a bunch of better wrestlers to hide that he's missing something, and I don't know what he's missing. But there's something not there, and I don't know if others see it, but I just feel like it's a fake it till you make it kind of thing. And I think he might actually make it. I just don't know what it is that he needs to make it with. Josh, do you have any thoughts?
That's a common experience for particularly independent guys coming through, isn't it? Often is trying to find their identity, especially in relation to New Japan Pro Wrestling. That's where they really privilege that ability to sort of demarcate yourself as different through character. I think in that respect, Zane J kind of suggests something there where there's, he came out. I think it's funny, fascinating when, especially for these guys, they're walking out in front of 6,000 people. It's like, this is a little different. This is a big step up from, the dojo for the Academy show that I just did, that kind of positioning. And you can kind of see that different relationship where it's like Zane J is sort of coming out and doing the gimmick stuff and realizing like this plays in a small group. It's not going to play in a big one. It's just good experience, I think. And obviously Vandergrift's on this run where they're just pushing this strong survivor vision. And I'm assuming it will lead to something of significance. And perhaps in that matchup, that's where, you're best likely going to see that, especially when you're not wrestling against guys. You're wrestling against guys of similar of a stature or experience. It's not until you get in there with the more experienced guys that you think that they have the potential to channel and simplify their stuff. So, yeah, I sort of reserve judgment with most of these young guys to treat them kind of like young boys in a lot of respects and just see where they go.
It is interesting that they have this mentality right now where they have one young lion that they're focusing on. Like, this is the guy that they're like, hey, we're developing you, instead of having 4 or 5 different guys along the spectrum. And I wonder if the experiment will work out better or be more efficient if they work on one guy at a time until they get a new system down. Because they're really turning over the coaching in the LA dojo with Shibata leaving and then Fred Rosser and a couple of the other guys taking over. So it just could be all work in progress thing. But I like the idea that they're starting slow and working with one guy with a strong survivor rather than, like I said, a bunch of them.
We mentioned the attendance of the show a couple of times. 6,000, almost as many people were at Sakura Genesis. Sakura Genesis 6,600. This was 6,000, and they were into everything all night. Like, this was a great crowd. They were very excited to be there. They were excited to see these guys, and they knew what they were doing. Like, this was a crowd that understood New Japan, understood Stardom, and even some CMLL in there too. So that had to be a great experience and a nice morale boost for everybody. The next match was the other opener. This wasn't the part of the official show. It was part of the pre-show tag team match with 4 women here: Alex Windsor and Trisha Dora taking on Mina Shirakawa from Stardom and Viva Van. And Mina got a good pop coming out. They knew who she was. And, of course, she's been everywhere this past week. I mean, goodness, she was on AEW, Ring of Honor, Stardom, here, everything. This match was crisp enough, but the point was all to feature and set up Alex Windsor. She got the win in this one. Everyone got a little bit in there, but the point of this one was Alex Windsor getting the victory on Viva Van and looking good because she had something to do after the strong women's title match. So, Alex has back from a pretty severe injury. She just had a big match over in England. I guess it was a dog collar match. I saw photographs from it where she was all bloodied up and everything. They went hardcore with it. And she was here and looked fine in this match. And looks like she's aiming for Stephanie Vaquer. So this match did its job, though. Got her over, got everyone a good look at her, and she looked strong in the victory. So it did exactly what it needed to.
I didn't get to watch a whole lot of this match. I had to step outside. So I'm going to defer to Josh for any of his thoughts. But from what I saw of it, I agree with everything.
Yeah, as Steven said, I pretty much endorse a lot of that. I mean, my takeaways are Mina Shirakawa is a superstar. And yes. I've felt that, obviously that this was to showcase Alex Windsor in this context. But I think that Mina's your next IWGP women's champion. I think that's her story. I think that's the direction to go. I think, I think just getting the Western audience to get a prolonged look at her is key, because I think she can have that kind of ambassadorial role that title kind of dictates. And I think, Alex Windsor, I've enjoyed her stuff every time I've seen the Rev Pro work, and she can go. And I think this is a good platform for the New Japan, strong women's division to kind of have that sort of international positioning where, people come through this as an opportunity. And I think that's, if you're going to frame it, you're not going to be big enough and to hold a division per se, having the, this kind of diversity of talent moving through. I think that makes a lot of sense. It also doesn't sort of relegate Stardom to being sort of subservient to the situation. It's more just different types of talent coming through for the belt. So thought it did exactly as you said, Stephen.
And like you said, Shirakawa is almost uniquely suited for to get over with Western audiences too. She has that very very outgoing personality. She kind of leans into the sexy part of it more than a lot of the stars in Stardom do. She's a terrific worker. There's very marketable person there. So
and great New Japan history. Because
yes,
I mean, she came in with with Yujiro as a valet all those years ago. You know, became a fan of pro wrestling because of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So for me, she is someone that has a strongest connection of any of the women's wrestling landscape, especially in the Stardom context, to a New Japan ring in particular. So that's why I think she's a project for them. Yeah, for sure.
I like that idea. It didn't even occur to me to put her in a title picture, but that makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, because Iwatani is going to move on. So just about everybody in the world thinks that she's going to go with Rossi as soon as she's contractually allowed to. So she's not a long term. Might be a while yet. But eventually they're going to have to take that title off of her. But yeah. Next match was Minoru Suzuki against Ren Narita, and it had a similar function as the match we just talked about. Again, as we now know, they had plans for Ren Narita tonight. Minoru Suzuki is a guy who's always going to get over. He's always going to get the crowd going. Everyone's going to be happy to see him. Everyone's going to sing Kaze ni Nare. So having Ren Narita heel against him is a good psychological ploy to get the crowd going, and it worked. It was the match itself was basic classic shine for the babyface early, then heat for the heel. And it all led to Suzuki getting tangled up with the referee. Narita used the push-up bar. He's using the push-up bar. He uses the push-up bar to beat Tomoaki Honma. He's sure as hell going to use it to beat Minoru Suzuki because we're heels hardcore here. Then he got the double cross to win it. Again, crowd was happy to see Suzuki. It was an effective heel finish. Ren Narita looked like a bastard properly, and he needed to because he was going to get involved with the main event later.
Josh, what were your thoughts about the elevation of Ren from his former mentor here?
Yeah, I mean, this was, as sort of Steven intimated, this is inspired booking from the moment I saw it. I was like, this is perfect because you know how Suzuki's going to be received in the West. And you're putting in Ren Narita here to, one, prove that his decision to leave and abandon Strong Style was the right one, that House of Torture is the more effective unit for himself. I think that, and, I remember when it happened, and there was a lot of discourse surrounding, Ren's in House of Torture, it's the end of his career. By the reaction he got both here and then later in the night, I think he made the right choice because the crowd, and I thought we're in for a good one here tonight because the crowd were booing. They were playing the role, right? They were just raining down boos for him for his action. I love the push-up bar thing. I think I love the idea of the torture tool idea for all of House of Torture, but I think what Ren reflects to me is that progression of House of Torture from sort of the shenanigan-filled buffoons to something, consequential. And I think you see that he's a lot meaner. And I think the idea of that push-up bar, which is synonymous with the dojo, and him inverting that and saying, screw this, I'm taking what you taught me and I'm taking it, I'm going to make it, I'm Breaking Bad. I love that narrative beat. And I think that he's got an edge to him that only Jack Perry also has. And each successive member of that group has had that more sinister, more, I think more, quite frankly, more serious presentation. And we saw it here again. He didn't need the shenanigans. He still needed to cheat. That's fine. He's a dastardly heel. But there's something a little bit more consequential to him. So I was thrilled with this. I didn't see this coming as where it would lead, but in retrospect, like the best of New Japan storytelling, it makes perfect sense upon reflection. So that's the sort of stuff I really love. So yeah, I enjoyed the match and the decision.
Yeah, I totally saw where they were intending to go with the call out at the end, but I did not see the veer left car crash. Actually, let me interrupt you here. But it made sense because the theme of the last month for New Japan has been the Reiwa or the younger generation facing off against someone from the older generation that has some type of link to them, right? You had Naito and Yota. You had Ren and Minoru when they had the Strong Style faction. And you were going to get Moxley and Shota, presumably at some point. But what's interesting about this is that they underplayed Renz because he did it in the dastardly low effort sort of way. He took the offer from Minoru Suzuki because he always knew he was going to turn on him. He wanted to take the information and the knowledge that Minoru had to offer to him, and then he was going to incorporate it into his own style, kind of like the old tales of people learning from the samurai masters and then just going off and taking it and just being the awful people in the land instead. This is what is happening there. And so seeing him elevate and get the advantage early from doing that, it's not going to pay off in the long run, but there's a symmetry and a parallel to all these stories that I actually find really fascinating. And that's what I really liked about this match, and I was hoping that they were going to execute on.
All right. After that, we had the NJPW Strong Women's Championship match, and this was Stephanie Vaquer against Azumi from Stardom. So we have CMLL versus Stardom in this one. The crowd was right in there with it. Again, they knew who these women were, and they were ready for the match. There is a good heel presence to Vaquer, and I thought she did very well using her size difference over Azumi. Like she's bigger than Azumi, and I thought she did a nice job of kind of imposing on her physically in this one. It helps that Azumi's very small, and so it take advantage of that if you got it. I was curious how this was going to go. I wasn't worried about it because I know Vaquer is a good worker. I see her on the Arena Mexico shows, but there are not women like Azumi in CMLL. Those real small, high-speed flyers like that. There isn't somebody. There's no avatar for her or anyone she could spar with that would be like Azumi. But she handled it great. Everything was terrific in this one. And Vaquer did her stuff great. Azumi's always good. Azumi hit a double stomp off the ropes that fans thought were the finish. The fans thought that was the finish. So when she kicked out of that, they were even more surprised and excited. She got out of the Azumi Sushi roll-up at about the 10-minute mark and then hit her package backbreaker to win. This was an excellent match. Once again, Vaquer continues to impress. She, like mentioned by Veda Scott, she's Chilean, working in Mexico, and it seems like every time I see her, she's a little bit better, and she was pretty good to start with. There's a renaissance going on in Mexican women's wrestling. I've been watching Mexican wrestling for a long time, Lucha Libre, and it hasn't always been this good, folks. Trust me, sometimes the women's trios match was the one to tolerate more than enjoy. Not the case anymore. There's great stuff over there. Vaquer's at the forefront of it. Alex Windsor came out afterwards after her victory in the tag team match earlier and challenged Vaquer. Looks like we're going to be getting that one pretty soon, and I don't see any reason why that one won't be a good match. This is good times. This is a strong division.
I got to tell you, when Windsor came out, there was a thought like, Ospreay's not on the show, is he? And that kind of played into something a little bit later on, and he ended up not being. But
Tony Khan was here. Tony Khan was here.
Oh, he was there.
He was there.
There was a consensus in this when we were watching this match that Vaquer is underrated.
Yes.
And that she is destined for bigger and better, and it's a matter of time. She has overcome so much personally and professionally that every time I see her succeed, that I'm just like, I'm rooting for her harder and harder. There's not much I have to add to this match. They were great dance partners with each other. The near falls were fantastic, and it was my first favorite match of the night until I had a couple more favorites that came along the way. Josh, what do you have?
Yeah, I mean, Stephanie Vaquer is a boss. There's no doubt that she just has that presence and doesn't have to sort of embodies that and that kind of, physical charisma. When you see it, you know it. And I think that works stylistically with Azumi. I mean, Azumi's awesome too. So you're getting, as I sort of mentioned earlier in relation to the division, you've got that diversity of styles, that interesting melting pot. I like that. There isn't necessarily an identity with it other than just you don't know what style you're going to get. Like you go from this to then the Windsor match coming up. It's going to be different. I think that's a really great endorsement of Stephanie Vaquer's her capacity to work different styles, working with different wrestlers. Which seems to be something that I'm starting to notice more and more, that is something that many of the lucha wrestlers are really adept at. Yota Tsuji made that a very key point about that's the benefit for his skill in the his ability to work in different ways is because that style dictates that you have to. So it's something that I'm not necessarily all that well versed in, but I keep getting more and more evidence of it. And yeah, it was an awesome, fun sort of blending of high speed and kind of physical work. And onto the next match for them. And I think this is good old fashioned classic traditional booking here, where we're playing it out in front of you, and then we're going to just logically show it to you across literally 35 minutes or so. And it makes all the sense in the world. We're excited because we know the characters, because they introduce themselves on the show that we're watching. So, yeah, good stuff.
There was a point where women's wrestling was a little bit higher on the card when these domestic New Japan shows. And my hope is that Stephanie Vaquer and the talent over at Stardom and everyone else can get those matches a little higher back up on the card. And I think that'll be one of the main bullet point goals for some of these domestic shows moving forward.
Yep.
Now, speaking of storytelling, there was a lot of it in this next one. This was the NJPW Strong Tag Team Title match. This is the Four Corners match, the open challenge from ELP and Hikuleo, El Phantasmo, who went into the match as the champions. And they had TMDK in one corner, Shane Haste, Mikey Nicholls, and then the West Coast Wrecking Crew, Royce Isaacs, Jorel Nelson, and then the team of Fred Rosser and Tom Lawlor. So it happened just basically the way we thought it was going to, in that the real point of this was to square off West Coast Wrecking Crew and the team of Rosser and Lawlor. And each team got a little bit of time to shine earlier in this one before the real story began. And so everyone got some moves in. And then eventually, though, West Coast Wrecking Crew had the match seemingly won, but Lawlor broke it up. So now you have Team Filthy kind of sabotaging each other, trying to win this match. And that led to the big square off with Rosser and Lawlor facing off with the West Coast Wrecking Crew. TMDK, ELP, Hikuleo were on the outside kind of letting this play out. And so that whole thing broke down. So the years of Team Filthy, they're now all officially feuding. And afterwards, El Phantasmo hit his big splash off the ropes, assisted by Hikuleo. And TMDK stole the pin, WWE style. Just chuck the guy out of the ring, jump on top of him. So that's a classic WWE booking right there. But they did do it that way. TMDK are the new NJPW Strong Tag Team Champions. And Rosser and Lawlor were attacked by West Coast Wrecking Crew after. And again, classic stuff here. They grab Lawlor, they cut his hair, gets that feud going. We'll probably see some form of this at Resurgence going forward. So just basic heat building, starting a new story. And we mentioned TMDK. We felt like their destination is eventually the IWGP heavyweight tag team titles. It looks like this is the beginning of them getting on the roll toward that. They're certainly not afraid to join those titles together. They've done it several times. They don't necessarily have to do that. They have months to take it off of TMDK if they want to, but this seems to be the beginning of TMDK making their run. They've mentioned that they're the best team never to hold the IWGP tag team titles too many times for them not to be heading that way. So this is the beginning of that, and ELP and Hikuleo can move on to other things and be singles wrestlers, really, I suppose. And, then they can always come back and do a rematch. That option is there as well. So
those guys are incredibly versatile,
Yeah.
TMDK, I didn't want them to win this match because I wanted them to make a beeline for the IWGP, the main tag titles. I'm pleasantly surprised that they did, because I think that they have done the work both in storytelling and in wrestling and investing in New Japan. I thought it was bizarre that Shane Haste wasn't in the New Japan Cup, so I'm glad to see that the pivot back to getting them some titles and their dedication both ways between the company and the performers seems to be back on balance. So that is a good thing. Again, protecting Hikuleo above all else in this match is something that they love doing. Find a company that loves a big man as much as New Japan loves Hikuleo is my line to go to. Everything about this match seemed to work. The heat for the next builds. I don't know what's up with ELP and Hikuleo, but I always tend to think that Hikuleo is always going to be a guy that always has something going on. And ELP could challenge for the never open weight title tomorrow and he'd be fine. I don't think that's going to be his plan, but he is also incredibly versatile. And if they don't want to keep him with a tag team together, they'll be fine. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought this match was incredibly instructive for what's kind of the best. What's been really good about this new version of Strong, in terms of where it's headed, in that it kind of did two things at once, or maybe three things at once. I mean, I'm never going to be down for TMDK. I will never be against TMDK winning a title. I'm very happy to see it as an Australian. TMDK is Australian for wrestling. It's awesome to see that. I think what you're talking to there, Jeremy, the idea of them, they should be going for the IWGP title, but because they've lost in that context so many times, I feel like this is almost sort of establishing them again and saying, no, they're credible in that sense. Even if they stole the win the way they did, they're a wily veteran tag team that you have to be mindful of. But what I liked about it was they figured out a way of doing a couple of things. We want to build the strong brand and a strong rivalry, which is Filthy and West Coast Wrecking Crew. But we also want to protect God, basically. We don't want to, off the back of the cup with both Hikuleo and ELP, they were like, we don't want them to lose per se. So they can lose the titles without taking a loss. Everybody's kind of protected in this space. TMDK get the win through their veteran nous, and we're off to the races. Whatever direction ELP and Hikuleo go, I'm not sure. I was concerned, obviously I'm always concerned, around contract times and directions and things of that nature. I'm like, oh, these guys, I really like them. I hope they stay around. This wasn't the type of loss that you would do if you were leaving a company per se. So it's something that gives me a bit of hope, is that they're protected commodities. So yeah, to me, a good bit of work in the sense of getting TMDK that validation that they are to be, they're credible. But also, we've got a good story with the Filthy, that's quite heated, quite honestly, and that cutting a man's hair through the middle of their head, very pro wrestler approach there, given that kind of the Road Warriors cut. And I think that will lead to, and obviously that story, that is for the strong sickos out there that have been following through the pandemic and all that sort of stuff, that is a key rivalry for them. So I kind of like that we got that part over here, and we got the New Japan domestic product kind of protected through this way. So yeah, a great example of what this brand can be, I think.
All I know is I hope that Filthy is more angry about his hair getting cut than Great O'Con was when Moxley cut it. He was just like, okay, well, you cut my hair, moving on. He's got to have a little bit more anger to it than that.
I don't try to understand what goes through the mind of the Great O'Con, to be fair.
Probably better for all of our sanity to try.
Mystery to us all. Mystery to us all. After that one, so we'll see how that one turns out. A resurgence, there'll probably be a chapter there. But this one, Shota Umino and Jack Perry. And boy, I love this. There was so much to like about this one. Jack Perry came. This was a wonderful performance from Jack Perry in this. And Umino was great too, but Perry came out in a Crimea River jacket and Riot Police. He's the biggest heel in Chicago, allegedly here. He has never been this over. I mean, his when he was Jungle Boy, his song was over more than he was. His entrance song was over. And then once the match started, I'm not saying that the crowd died, but he never had heat like this as he does here. And he handled it very well, I thought. At one point, he was getting competing chants of, "You got choked out." No, he didn't, from the crowd after with the little surveillance footage that we got on Dynamite. And he grabbed a choke. He grabbed a choke right there and just played it up to the crowd completely. It was a lot of heat early. Umino did get a bit of a comeback, and he did the Jungle Boy wave. So there were a lot of callbacks in this. But there was good intensity in the match, and they kept the crowd throughout, although these fans were into everything tonight. The fans chanted for the GTS. He tried the GTS, and that was turned into an excellent-looking DDT. Finish was the Blaze Blade and the Death Rider to win. Great heel performance by Jack Perry. He handled that crowd beautifully. The crowd was right there for all of it, and I think the crowd was having more fun with it than anything else. I didn't sense a lot of actual hatred heat. I had a feeling that it was a crowd of people that are just like, okay, you got into a thing with our guy at CM Punk, but we're gonna play into it. But I never really felt like it was like super heat. It was just the kind of heat that you want out of something like this. And I thought Umino was an excellent babyface. Afterwards, he congratulated Shota for beating him and left. It felt like he's definitely gone, that this wraps up his story in New Japan for right now. And gee whiz, if only there were the owner of a major wrestling company in the back that might have some plans for him. But that's not why Tony Khan was there. It was for another guy probably. But this definitely felt like the end of this. Shota Umino got a nice win here. Finally, they put Shota over. But an excellent performance by Jack Perry. I just can't say enough about this. We mentioned that sometimes turning heel is exactly what you need to bring out that charisma in the guy. And I think this has just been a very healthy run for Jack Perry overall, as far as his in-ring performance goes.
Josh, I'd love to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think that, well, see, the thing, Jack Perry turned heel from, I don't watch AEW with any regularity, but from what I recall, he did turn heel prior to the incident.
Yes.
And with trying to find himself. I think what I've loved about the Jack Perry, sort of this is a microcosm of Jack Perry's run, as it seems that he's perhaps leaving now, is that, people were very down on him joining House of Torture, which is a common theme. Oh my God, his career is over, right? We're hearing that a lot. But for someone like him, this was the opportunity to just explore the room, right? To feel the space and I'm going to go into this heel persona and I'm going to have literally freedom of judgment, which fits with the character as well. I'm free from your judgment. I am not here to perform for you. And House of Torture accept that idea, right? Yes. And so he was just when people saying, "Oh man, his promos are getting so good," everything. It's and there was so much of the discourse was just detaching that aspect from House of Torture. It's a byproduct of that experience, and then you get to come to this this room, this big house that are there. And as you mentioned, it was very heated. It's probably as heated as sort of modern pro wrestling gets, where there's some level of resentment in there somewhere, but it's mostly just everyone sort of just exulting in their experience of being a fan and being part of this. And you got more dueling chants than I sort of expected. But then again, he got a star reaction where it's just, you're not a heel or babyface, you're a star. And we just gravitating to this idea. But I really loved what the run did, where it allowed him to explore that. But also, the story of Shota Umino is an ongoing one, but it's the one of a person who hasn't got a clarity of their identity yet. He still works in the shadow of Mox in some respects. He's always 2 foot from greatness, that kind of vision. And as you mentioned, Jack Perry, that's his kind of idea. I was once the chosen one. I was once a pillar. I was once one of these things. And I sought the adoration of fans, and it got me nothing. And what I found really interesting in this little story is that, he's trying to say this and he's trying to teach Shota Umino that. That's why I think where the respect at the end was. It wasn't so much I'm turning face or it was, I wanted you to stop caring about them and start caring about this right now and fight me. And what I found ironic was that the doorway, the way that opened up that opportunity was Jack Perry playing to the crowd. Caring about showing them something, playing to those who cheered for him and those that were supporting him when they were doing the Cry Me a River chant, and he's orchestrating that. It was there, despite your insistence that you do not want their adoration, you can't help yourself even in that moment. When they're doing that, that's ultimately who you are. You're a babyface at heart. And so I think it's inevitable that he'll be a babyface eventually of AEW, because it's just the nature of this progression. And also, I think, obviously the whole tape being rolled and everything being seen, he had 2 wins. I was anticipating a double win. He gets a win there. At least he went 50-50 this week to break out of the scapegoat, as it was. Yeah. But I do think all in all, that run is an example of what I think the relationship can be and should be, because it was an opportunity to put him in a space where he could develop character elements that he was clearly not doing and getting prior to whatever happened. And he's obviously made the best out of not a really great situation. He's made the best out of it, and I think he's benefited the most.
And he made the best of it, frankly. You're absolutely
Which is New Japan Pro Wrestling, right? Reality happens. Let's not avoid it. Let's use it and frame up it and inform our characters through it, but find a way to make it compelling and give a reason. I think the match did that as well. So at the end of it, I say, Shota Umino has showed at least one step of progression where he got into that fight. He flicked the switch, and when he flicked that switch, it was over. It was bang, 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 bang. And I think that's where the realization is Jack Perry's almost acknowledging, yep, I feel like you're getting there, and maybe I've still got a ways to go as well. So I liked that. I wasn't down on the conclusion at all, but the heat, it was just great. It was great to see pro wrestling folks, like pro wrestling, just as old fashioned as it gets. So yeah, I was really enjoyed the match.
I had one booking thing that was told to me afterwards that I'll share at the end of this little diatribe, and then a choice after the fact that I thought was a mistake. But with that said, there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of narratives about what Jack Perry did to get himself back over. If there's anyone in AEW that takes any credit for the rehabilitation that Jack Perry did on himself in New Japan, being goon number 2 in the House of Torture, learning from Evil, learning from those guys on the road for the last month, all the work he did, he earned it all on his own. And you cannot take that away from him. And there's nobody in AEW from the top down that gets to take any credit for the work that Jack Perry put in on himself for this excursion that he had for himself. And I want to tip my cap to him, because the reactions that he got was when he had the maturity to realize that you can lean into these reactions into the match without it being a detriment to the company that you're working for and the match itself. And so that is a big maturity step up for him. I love this match. I thought these two were natural heel and face to each other. Everything about it was great. There was one thing that I was told by somebody who was in the audience, and I respect their booking mentality amazingly. You may hear this elsewhere. When Jack Perry put Shota up for the go to sleep, he should have hit it, and Shota should have kicked out at 1. And that would have made the match absolutely perfect. It was A+ as it was in my mind. It checked off all the boxes that it needed to, both for Shota to elevate himself as the top babyface of the company, and for Jack Perry to look like he belongs at the dance. That is a big deal for him. That is all he had to accomplish. But I did not like afterwards when he did the whole hug, shake hands, just leave a heel, man. Like, leave the mentality. I know that you had a great time. I know you were working with these guys, and it's the first time you probably enjoyed wrestling in a very, very, very long time. But that's the part you should have left in the back.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because just to add to that, we talk about, he deserves the credit for what he's done. I think he's going to be required in a lot of respects, because I'm not to relitigate the AEW stuff with the tape and everything of that nature, but I've heard a lot of discourse around, who's the heel and who's the face in the decision to make that public and all that sort of stuff. Like, that's a real, and from my end, that's a real interesting area to explore. But what I think is interesting about Jack Perry is he's a heel in the sense, but he's also his opposition is the company. He's against AEW. That's his framing. And so AEW kind of positioned themselves almost heelish in the framing of the way that they did this whole angle thing. Yep. And so I feel like he's essential as sort of, combining the narrative and making it make sense, because he can be like, I have been punished by the company for this. Now, whether that's something that AEW is in a position to be able to, handle, and whether the fans want that kind of work shoot positioning, I'm not sure. I like Jack Perry over in New Japan doing it like that, because it gives them a bit of insulation, and it sort of insulates the fans from that experience. Because I found it funny in the match too that there was a moment where Jack went for his like regal knee thing, which has been his kind of finish in the cup, and there wasn't the level of pop for the potential of that kick out of like, that's a big moment. I was like, oh, I wonder what level of fan here has been
familiarity.
Yeah, I was curious about it in that sense. It was like a little indicator.
Yeah,
but and that's why I think he did the. I think that's why he can somewhat. And I hear your point, Jeremy. But I think there's some way you can say that hug and that moment is not so much that he's a heel versus Shota. He's just a heel versus what Shota was trying to be, because he resents what AEW platforms. He resents that Shota is someone that they like that kind of vision. And
he played it carefully by flipping off the audience like right away. It's like, I respect you, but fuck all you guys. Like, if the fuck you, you're cool, but in reverse, like fuck you.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So it's fine, but it's just one of those like, you had it, like your entire presentation tonight with everything that you were going for, and you just kind of like at the very end, it's like running towards the end zone, doing like I got the ball, and it's just like and just kind of fumbling it at the very end, right before you're trying to hit. Right.
But I always like when they do that because my instinct is to ask why. Like, why would you do that? That seems like such an odd decision. And so I have to believe that, given what he's demonstrated, that, there might be a reason for that.
Yeah, I think
and
he
hopefully
really
we'll find out.
like his time, and it's been a long time that he's enjoyed working in a company for pro wrestling. And it'll be interesting if all go according to plan. I'm wondering what Jack Perry is going to be like standing next to the Young Bucks and Kazuchika Okada for the foreseeable future. That is a weird visual.
Yeah. Okada being House of Torture adjacent.
Everything's getting a little muddy. We're getting a little muddy.
After this, we had Mustafa Ali, the TNA X Division champion, although that title was not on the line, against Hiromu Takahashi. Now, this one, these are two preternaturally talented men. And the first part about it is we can't talk about this match without talking about Daryl. So Daryl was back. The stuffed animal was back.
Daryl Jr.
It was El Hijo del Daryl. Yeah, Daryl, yes. Daryl Jr. was back, and he is jacked, folks. He is absolutely jacked. He's been. They mentioned he went off on excursion and bulked up. He had abs, he had arms, the whole thing. So they brought that back. There were a lot of Daryl spots in this, but you know what? They made this work. This wasn't. It wasn't bad, and I like the way Ali played it, where Ali was kind of like, okay, I know you're nuts. So if I play along with this Daryl thing, maybe I can find an opening to get a shot in on Hiromu. And, like when he was almost working with Daryl, so to speak, Hiromu put Daryl in the ring and offered and slid out like as if he had tagged out or whatever. And Ali kind of played it like, okay, I'm going to bait Hiromu into the ring. And when Hiromu came in, I got you, and they kind of squared off again. I appreciated that rather than just go all in on we're talking to a stuffed animal here. But once they got to wrestling, these two are fantastic. And so this was a really good match. They had a lot of good wrestling in this. Ali hit a backflip off the buckle and then a tope suicida that went into the barricade. Chris Charlton has been waiting years to take a bump, and he got to take one tonight. They slid into his announce desk, and he carefully toppled over in front of it just so that he could get the bump in. And Veda and Walker were gracious enough in selling it. He also busted his head open on that barricade. I think it was on the barricade right there. Ali did. He was bleeding.
It was for that tope suicida for sure.
It was, yeah. He ended up though. They went on. He hit a 450 splash to win. This surprised me in a way. I suppose that my theory on this was that Hiromu was going to win, thus leading to an X Division match in the future, and they might still have one of those in the future. But I understand putting Ali over in Chicago. He's local. He's a Chicago guy. It also sets up this idea that Hiromu is on a very cold streak going into Best of the Super Juniors, having won it 4 of the last 5 years and the last 3. So I understood where they went with it once they did it. Again, Hiromu is going to have a mountain to climb. He's behind the 8 ball a little bit already before this tournament even starts. Other guys are getting wins. Doki's getting wins. Fujita's getting wins. Hiromu can't buy a win right now. So puts it in jeopardy because they had some work to do in that respect. We talked about how he and Desperado were kind of heavy favorites on paper. So they're going to have to tell the story that there are other people that are threats here. Although I did kind of think he was going to win, so at least we can get the X Division match out of this eventually. So that surprised me a little bit, but they can get to that other ways, and that was fine. It's a good match. Mustafa Ali wins in his hometown of Chicago. No complaints here, and he shook hands with Daryl afterwards. And Ali's not going to be thoroughly booed in Chicago. It's not going to happen. So it's fine that he babyface.
He was not the babyface.
Right.
This was a decidedly Hiromu crowd. And,
it was. It's a New Japan crowd, but he babyfaced himself a little bit. But they weren't hating him either. And so when he shook hands with Daryl, he got one of the bigger pops of the night afterwards, right there. But I was reading X for a little while, which I don't do very often. But I was very curious to hear what Japanese fans thought of this. So I was doing the hashtag, and I was translating. Google Translate's a little rough with Japanese into English, but I was getting the idea of what some of the Japanese over and over again. Let's see more of this Ali guy. Let's see more of this guy over and over again. I really like this guy. Boy, this guy's fun. And so in that sense, a big success for Mustafa Ali because it seemed like the Japanese fans were into him.
Yeah, you and I were on the same page with the X Division, but I was listening to Josh and Dave talking, and they were pinging the losing streak for Hiromu, and I was like, I think they're right on this one.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to let him delve into a little bit more on that one.
Okay.
I thought they went a little too long with the comedy before they got underway with the seriousness of this match. I felt like they were just trying to play to the crowd, and it took them a little while to get the crowd back afterwards. But when they saw the color on Ali, especially on the turnbuckle, when the hand slap and the blood in the turnbuckle, I think the tone and the shift of the match changed, and the crowd really got into it, and both performers really got something out of it, and I was surprised by the finish. It shouldn't have been in hindsight, but I'm going to let Josh expand more on that.
All right.
Yeah, I think I was very curious heading into this matchup because of the Hiromu stuff. Obviously, as we said, we've been of the belief that Hiromu has been, diplomatic language stagnant, stale, if you're looking for a bit more inflammatory language, since, for a while now, in terms of the title became such a key aspect for him, and holding that belt and having this like run and beating multiple people, something that was so incongruent with the initial time bomb, like that idea that he was this, a figure that is, I think, ingrained in the imagination of, casual fans. Of when they think of Hiromu, they think of the madman, right? And he is, in my opinion, and what both Dave and I have talked about, he's on the descent to madness. He is heading back towards the time bomb, we feel, and it's going to happen through loss and losing that sense of responsibility that he's had to have as the ace of the division and one of the greatest juniors of all time. And so I was kind of expecting a lot of what we saw with the Daryl Jr. stuff, even the Daryl Jr. stuff, is a return to the past, right? Something that we haven't seen a lot of is Daryl and Daryl integration. And we were like, okay, well, you're going to get a bit of that. And I was really curious to how the crowd would react, because they're not going to get the Hiromu evolved. They're going to kind of get a blend that's really focusing heavy on story and odd. And I think, as you mentioned, Jeremy, that first part was all of that. And it wasn't really the best showcase for Mustafa in a lot of respects in that space, because he had to do a lot of work to kind of make this logic make sense. And I think that when we got to the flashy stuff at the end, I was like, cool, that's interesting. And I enjoyed that. I'm very curious as to what Mustafa Ali's role in New Japan will be, if any, to be honest. I think that this was almost a platform my view was this was a platform to get a lot of eyes on the Hiromu's movement. And I think Hiromu and Bushi being paired up with the War Dogs, I think this LIJ War Dogs feud stuff is going to be fascinating, because they are madmen, and I think that the idea of those two pairing up is that they'll descend into madness, and Hiromu is his answer. The panacea to the War Dogs is him going to what he once was, that crazy time bomb character, and countering their mad aggression with that kind of unpredictability and just, I'll do whatever. And I think a lot of stuff in this match was almost calling back, he was taking some bumps that Hiromu hasn't taken in a long while, some of those head drops and some of that sort of that flip power bomb, sunset flip bomb that he took, like that was a big hit for him. And it was kind of, I think, him putting himself in positions that he used to put. Like Hiromu was famous for putting his head where people wouldn't put their feet. That was kind of his stuff. And he hasn't done that for a long time. And I think we're starting to see that movement. So yeah, I anticipated that. I don't know what it means for Mustafa Ali. I don't know whether this character that he's working currently, it really hasn't hit for me in what I've seen in the presentation. I hope that in New Japan that could give him, because he's kind of playing it's kind of a heelish character. Like, I will change the world of pro wrestling. I also don't know if it's necessarily a junior character either. It seems one that's tied to, open weight at least. So curious, but I enjoyed it, and I was pleased to see the crowd got to sort of see what I think is a key narrative beat on Hiromu's return. I know a lot of people will be concerned that they're sort of debasing him to build him up through the Super Juniors. Hiromu wins, lol.
Right.
But I think that is where we're going to see the true manifestation of all of this, that it's his transition is going to happen through that tournament. You will see it through those 9 matches. You're going to see that become really clear, I think, and we're going to get the time bomb back, I think.
That wasn't something I had considered, but that's definitely viable given everything you've laid out the way you have. Steven, sorry.
No, it's fine. Super Juniors is going to be very interesting in that respect with his character. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Desperado. It's going to be interesting to see what they did with TJP, because we mentioned on this thing that TJP seems to be either headed to either for disaster or to somehow surge ahead and take over United Empire. And we just thought, well, this tournament is going to be where a lot of that shows up. Either he's going to bomb out and it's going to be, the end of him in United Empire, or he's going to turn. There's going to be something, I think, fairly seismic with TJP, whichever direction they decide to go with it. And so there might be a lot going on in Super Juniors that's not to do with who wins Super Juniors,
yes.
Which year on year isn't necessarily the case. Like Super Juniors is often a bunch of very good matches that lead to somebody winning and getting the title shot, and there's not always the Yo and Show thing they've done there before, but this year feels like there's a lot of subplots going into this thing, a lot more than usual, I guess.
Steven, before we move on to the next thing, I'm going to do all the cheap plugs and all that stuff. If you are a new viewer coming in, checking this out because you wanted to see a recap show, we are members of the Fight Game Media Network. We do video shows alongside the Dynamite Show, 5-Star Joshi Show sometimes, the Double G Show. We also have audio shows, The Wrap, also the Dynamite Show, 5-Star Joshi, the video show Power Bomb Shows. And if you like what we do and what you see, please like, subscribe, share, click that thumbs up button, as well as make sure that you check out the WeWorkStiff Club, all the things through Josh and WeWorkStiff. If you look up WeWorkStiff on X and Twitter, you're going to find all the information that you need regarding them. We've been tagging them in all the accounts. There's no way you can miss it if you put one eye out. So, Steven, let's move on to the next match.
The next match was strictly a way station on the way to something else. And with wrestling needing to be a variety show, we needed a match like this, apparently. So this was different than everything else on the card, granted, and it gets us to something a little bit more important down the way. We had the Tornado Mystery Vortex match. This was an 8-man tag. So we knew Gabe Kidd, we knew Eddie Kingston on opposite sides. We did not know who their partners were going to be, but we did know that once it all started, it would be a tornado match, no disqualifications. Everyone's going to fight all over the building. Yeah, hardcore match, and that's what we got. So Gabe Kidd came out with Bullet Club Brethren. So he had Kenta, who got a big pop. People were excited to see Kenta.
People love Kenta.
Yeah. Clark Connors.
He's beloved.
Clark Connors, and then David Finlay. And so that was the group there. I want to get back to that when we in a little bit, that lineup and when we so on the other side, Eddie Kingston, Jeff Cobb, TJP, and Homicide. Now we figured Homicide was coming. We also thought that we might see Mark Briscoe here. Instead, what they did was they went with 2 United Empire members trying to get revenge from the cage match in Osaka. So
let me ask you this: do you think Will Ospreay still owes Eddie Kingston one?
Yeah, man, I don't know, maybe so, but this was this isn't the kind of match I like, but I understand. I promise I do understand that matches like this can be done well, but I don't know if I'm the guy to review this one because I kind of bristle at the whole hardcore match in the first place. It's just not my favorite style of wrestling, so I'm going to turn this one over to you guys, and then we're going to talk about the lineups because there was some subtext to all that. But what did you guys think of this as a match?
This was the cage match in Osaka without the cage, toned down to a specific degree. This is what
the athleticism or the excitement.
If you were scrutinizing this match and you go back and watch it, you're going to notice about 3 guys that were doing absolutely nothing for the majority of this match because they were there, but they weren't really into this match. It was like Damian Priest in the ladder match at WrestleMania. Like they were contracted to do this match because somebody told them they had to do it, but they found every opportunity to find some way to be off to the side and do that. And more power to them because, they got to preserve their bodies for the future. The other 5 guys just decided to go for it. This was a match for Homicide, honestly. It was just going around Homicide, Clark Connors, Kingston, and Gabe Kidd. Gabe Kidd is an absolute madman. There is an argument to be made about the presentation of Gabe Kidd and David Finlay in this match, in which Gabe Kidd was clearly presented as the front man in a lot of ways, with David Finlay just being the guy who's like, okay, this is your show. Even when they had Kingston down, it was Finlay holding the guy back, with Gabe having the presentation as the primary driver of conflict. I thought that was interesting. And I don't know what that forebodes. I didn't much care for this match. I thought it was fun. I thought that if it wasn't Eddie Kingston and Gabe Kidd in this match, I'd have zero interest in it whatsoever. And so moving forward and keeping that interest, that is the good thing. This match wasn't for me either, but I get why it was there. I get why people like it. And I get why it adds an element of excitement to these shows that make it feel like more than just a typical pay-per-view. Like you're getting your money's worth kind of match, if that makes any sense. It's not for everybody, but if you feel like, oh, I didn't get any of the crazy shit, well, you got your crazy shit, guys.
Yeah. So, Josh, we'll go over to you here in just a second. Of course, Homicide ended up taking the pin, by the way, and they made Eddie Kingston watch his friend Homicide get package pile driver and pinned, and all that's to set up Gabe Kidd and Eddie Kingston at Resurgence. But so, I mean, it told the story. It did tell a story right there. But to me, I'm with Jeremy. The more interesting thing is that, boy, Gabe Kidd sure looked like the leader of Bullet Club in this match. And I know that this is one night, but there's something going on there. I think the company might be looking at Gabe Kidd, just thinking that, boy, maybe this is the guy.
Yeah, I think it's by design. I think the whole mystery opponent, we kind of speculated about it, because it's like, if you're going to hold off on that, you've got to go one of two ways, right? You have to either bring a surprise, or you have to make a surprising move. And I think obviously Kenta was in there, I'm assuming, replacing Driller, who had the burst eardrum.
Yeah.
I did think it's great for Kenta. It's great to get a GTS in Chicago. I think that was a nice little touch. But I do think that that kind of might obscure a little bit, not a lot, but just a little bit over Finlay's role in this, in the sense of, was Finlay the replacement versus Kenta? I would have it's unfortunate circumstances, because I think that is the story. The story is that Finlay was playing somewhat a subservient role to Gabe Kidd in this instance. Now, that can go one of two ways, right? You can look at that one of two ways. You can say, this is the War Dogs under David Finlay. He is going to be, in many ways, what Jay White said Bullet Club would be about. Like, he's about the team and that kind of thing, right? But everything that Finlay has told us previously is counter to that. He said, I will use Bullet Club like a tool, like a weapon. I will use it for my benefit. That's what I'm going to do. Yes. This was not for his benefit. This was for Gabe's benefit. So that's very curious. It's something to make note of. And then on the other side, I think it was also notable that you had the UE guys, you had TJP and Jeff Cobb, who seemed to be the two guys kind of having, they had literal words with one another in front of all of us at Square Genesis regarding that. Even at the very end, where they're in the ring, a beautiful shot where TJP is behind Jeff Cobb, like crouching, looking up at him. And just that momentary, just a hint that, I wouldn't turn my back on the Aswang character at this point. I think that this did a lot of work in trying to do a lot of factional storytelling, ostensibly in the framing of what Strong has kind of leveraged a bit. Is they always feel like we need a plunder match. There seems to be a history of we got an American show. Let's put a plunder match on.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think they think that American audiences can't have a wrestling show without it.
Yeah, I think, and to some extent, it's a variety show, and I think they want to show deference to the culture of wrestling that they're entering in, and sort of say, it's the New Japan approach to your conventions. We'll take what you do and we'll make it through our lens. And I think that even in that context, they did a fair enough job of doing that. It felt, you're right, there was a lot of kind of, it had, it's a relative to the cage match. It's not, it's obviously not to nowhere near to the level that hit. But also that wasn't the goal. I think it was just to give people almost a revised version. Here we go. We're going to do like the kind of the script, the notes, and we'll just go run through play the hits and get to the outcome. And I think that the outcome is a big outcome. I think Gabe Kidd is a runaway train. We've talked about it. He's unstoppable at this point in terms of he's going to be the star. He's going to be the guy. And Finlay is standing in his way ostensibly to that movement. So I've been thinking maybe it's going to happen in time, but this feels like the timeline is moving up. This train is going through some stops quickly, and I think Finlay is on the docket, because this framing of this match was all about, in my view, telling us that Gabe Kidd and his War Dogs, that's who they are. They're Gabe Kidd and his War Dogs, because they're the ones backing him up at Genesis. Finlay and him are on a collision course. I just feel that's the case, unless Finlay wants to, ostensibly bend the knee.
If I did, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, please. I think you're going to make the same point I'm about to. Go ahead.
I don't know. I find it really interesting that they've only booked a few matches for the next month's show. But one of the things they made a point of booking was Gabe Kidd is going to have a match at this show with Eddie Kingston. It's like those are one of the 3 matches they told you. They told you you're going to get a hardcore match with him. And I had a conversation with Steven, and you had the same conversation with Dave. The Gabe Kidd reminds us of Stone Cold Steve Austin. There is a connection with the audience that they just vibe with him in a way that I can only compare it to Stone Cold. And I don't remember which one of you actually like was eloquent about it, but you explained it in such a way that it was like, when you did it, like, okay, if you don't get it, I don't know how, you don't get it, but that's basically it. But when I saw that, I was just like, there is a belief in Gabe Kidd, because he is one of the drivers of their business, and they're trying to put him out in front of him.
Yeah. I postulated that they could go a couple different ways with it. It could be an overthrow of Finlay with Kidd, but if the crowd keeps going with Kidd, the way to do it might be to have Kidd just about to ascend to that point, and then have Finlay lay him out like he did Jay White, kick him out of Bullet Club, and then Finlay's the biggest asshole in the whole company, and turn Gabe into a super baby face out of it. That's months down the road, but I mean, there's ways you can do that where it can pay off and actually work for Finlay, instead of making Finlay look like a chump, make him look like the biggest jerk in the room. So,
I think you're right. I think you're right. It may not be turning face, but I think Finlay. I think the connection between Gabe Kidd though and the War Dogs, the LA Dojo, and with Driller, I think that is stronger than. I think Finlay is using them. I think that has always been the framing, that he is using them. And even in this case, you could say he's manipulating the thing to get to his ultimate ends. That has to be the way he's subverting the dojo for his gain, right? Instead of being the third guy or the fourth guy in the dojo, he's going to be the guy that's going to use it for his benefit. At some point, they'll wise up. You saw it in the build to that cage match, Driller and Gabe Kidd, that were literally talking behind his back, and Finlay was constantly saying, "Shut up, Gabe." He was constantly trying to keep Gabe in line. This situation was like, well, maybe he's just seen that Gabe being let loose is the best. It's very, it's in his best interest to let the War Dog run free for a bit. But at some point, Finlay's going to try to reel him in. And when that happens, that's when it all goes down, I feel.
Should be interesting to watch, because, when no one has Kidd's intensity, it's so when he gets really into something, he's riveting to watch. So it'll be fun. Now, the next title match was an interesting one. So we had the TV title match between Zack Sabre Jr. and Matt Riddle. And what did we get here? Boy, we got...
Let me ask you guys this real quick. Who thought this was going to be a draw?
There was a lot of people in our Discord at the Stiff.club had speculated that. There was... I just wouldn't let any result other than Zack leaving the title enter my mind, to be fair.
Yeah, I understand. We were like, well... We feel like Zack is destined for bigger things in the TV title. He's already had the run, but man, it'd be great if he took this thing back and got rid of Matt Riddle. The New Japan fans never did take to Matt Riddle. I mean, he came out to virtual silence in Japan. They weren't that interested, and I know I wasn't. And they weren't in Chicago. They kind of booed him right there. Zack worked his feet, which I've never seen anybody do. Started working the thing. I appreciated that. Did some of the Pete Dunne spots with the toes. Zack just countered everything that he did. It just, Zack had a million different counters. Riddle kept trying to hit big knee strikes, sometimes did, but most of it was him trying and Zack countering. He did hit a floating bro for two. Zack countered an attempted knee into a roll up to win it just after the 10-minute mark. Another course correction. We get more title holders from around the turn of the year back. You know, oh yeah, let's get the Never belt back on Shingo. Oh yeah, let's get the TV title back on Zack. Let's get the other thing. But you know, in the end, Jesus, Riddle loses this match, loses his TV title, rolls out of the ring, smiles, doesn't sell a thing, walks back up the aisle and out. Hopefully, off to AEW or TNA.
I think the experiment is over. I think it's done.
It's over.
Like a peace out.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't put anything over, just left. And frankly, the door can avoid hitting him in the ass on the way out. I don't care. If Tony Khan wants to bring yet another sex pest into AEW, he was right there backstage. You can always do that. Or you can go to TNA, or I don't care. Quite frankly, where he goes. Venkin says AEW
he'll be
doesn't.
fine over an MLW. He knows that his career is not going to be anything that he ever envisioned that it was, and I just don't get the sense that it felt like a good fit with him and New Japan. Like,
no, it was not.
He was supposed to be in the New Japan Cup. He was supposed to be in there, and something happened. He ended up not being in it, and like
Japan doesn't
a month
have
later,
the same,
he's out.
I've been saying it over and over again. Japan does not have the same attitude toward weed that we do. That whole wink and a nod, and it's kind of funny and cute and all this kind of stuff. In Japan, it's a serious offense and all that. There's no way that bunglehead can go through an entire tour in Japan and not screw up. It's impossible. I
don't know.
So there's no way that guy could do a 3-week tour without it going wrong. And either way, he doesn't need to be around people. I just don't. I didn't want him in New Japan. I'm glad he's gone. How about that?
I will say this: on the merits of the match itself, this was a fantastic exhibition between these two wrestlers. Matt Riddle and Zack Sabre Jr. had an amazing technical match with each other, and it was a spectacle to watch. If you have issues with Matt Riddle, I have issues with Matt Riddle, and you are able to compartmentalize or not compartmentalize, and you can draw that conclusion or not, the conclusion I drew was technically a fantastic match. If for whatever reason you don't ever want to watch a Matt Riddle match, I get it. But if you're, on the merits of its own, I gave it a thumbs up for the performance.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
yeah. Sorry, man. I just and for anyone that's any of our stiffies out there that may have joined in, anyone that listens to our show will know that we're not the biggest fans of Redacted, as we call him. We
well said.
and in a lot of respects, this is a perfect example why. Because when you think about New Japan Pro Wrestling, when a lot of people think about New Japan Pro Wrestling, they kind of think about this match. They kind of think about this style of pro wrestling, this idea of sports, combat sports infused pro wrestling. But one of the key attributes is bringing your whole self to the matches, right? That's why Zack is so compelling, is because he is like our socialist king, right? He's this guy that's coming in that brings all of who he is or who he projects to be in every social context he brings to the match. Moxley gets over because he is all himself. He's this authentic expression. Yep. Naito's career is that is what New Japan platforms. When you have someone why are they booing him? The question is, why are they booing him, right? Are they booing him because of his work, because of the way he's framed it? They shouldn't. That's not ostensibly the way he's been promoted, and not a lot in terms of promotion, not on the main poster, which is another curious, and sort of suggestion of perhaps wrongdoing. They're booing him because of the allegations, what's around all of this stuff, right? His history, the stuff he's done, even talking about, if you're a New Japan fan, as you mentioned in Japan, talking about doing cocaine on the MMA hour or whatever, like that stuff with the belt in front of him. Yeah. All of these things make him, unlikable to a large degree. I wasn't sure what the reaction would be. I was very pleased to see that people were booing him. But the issue is you can't acknowledge it. Because if you're acknowledging it, you're bringing stuff into the character that is unpleasant and can't work. So we just ignore that. And so you can't tell interesting or compelling stories with him in a New Japan context. And as a consequence, where's the benefit? Is it just good matches? I am of the belief that good matches are not enough to connect you in a New Japan Pro Wrestling context. The benefit is, yes, there are great matches, but it's compelling characters. It's simple stories, complex characters. And because of all of the outside stuff, Redacted, it's got to be simple character, and that's not enough, and it's unpleasant character. And I think, and in some perhaps even more stern judges say no character. And I think that, to me, I was happy to see this go the way it went.
Yes,
I was happy to see Zack do this, and for our listeners, we predicted that the man would turn up after, Jeff Cobb would turn up after. That's the direction that made the most sense, because Jeff is, in a lot of ways, is a very similar type of wrestler, but he has a problem to be solved the same way. We saw it last year in the run with Zack Sabre Jr. He was the guy that was the closest to getting him. And I feel like this is a simple move, and it's going to be a quick move. I think it's going to be Zack, get the belt, go back to the rivalry, put it on Jeff, and fire upwards for Zack. And Jeff Cobb can kind of have that run that Zack had last year. I think Jeff can get a lot out of it this year. So that was how I looked at the course correct, and I think it's the right way to go.
And Jeff, that was a draw last time with Zack and Jeff, right? So the one challenger he didn't vanquish.
Yep.
It also plays into if Jeff Cobb wins on a title match first run out at this point in time, boy, that would upset TJP just a little bit, wouldn't it?
Exactly right. I have big hopes in Jeff this year. I think he's a commodity. I think he's the one that's going to benefit the most in United Empire out of Ospreay.
He's the guy that, it's like, I famously got a lot of credibility off of predicting he was going to get a draw in the G1 because they have a plan for him on how they're going to elevate him slowly, incrementally over time. And, it's like, it's all part of the story. And he has been there a long time, and he plays it pretty casual, but they have something in mind for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think both Zack and Jeff are destined for better things, and we're better off without Riddle involved. So the next match was not a title match, but it was global heavyweight champion Nick Nemeth against Tomohiro Ishii. So completely opposite vibes of the last one. It seems like the New Japan fans are taking to Nick Nemeth, and I think it's because he has put forth a lot of effort and has done a pretty good job. But they responded well to him. His athletic style of selling really works when you're facing someone like Ishii, and we saw it a few times where Ishii would hit Nemeth and he would just splatter himself on the mat the way he does, and that really works for a powerhouse type of wrestler like Ishii. It was an Ishii match. And I mean that as a compliment. Like he has his match, and it's going to be like this. And I could watch it every day and twice on Saturdays and Sundays and not get tired of it. And this was another good example of one. And Nemeth went along with it very well. It got a "This is awesome" chant, and eventually Nemeth did hit the danger zone to win. But it was just a classic hard hitting. You hit me, I hit you. We square off type of thing, and Ishii works those better than anybody else, and it worked here. The crowd liked it, and of course, we said that this was going to be one of those matches where they put him in with a guy who's bulletproof. Ishii can also lose every night and not lose credibility with the fans. He's in a very interesting position like that, so you can beat him. Nemeth gets a strong win on the way to Tanahashi, because the story is that he wants to defend against Tanahashi, and worked out fine. Good match, told the story, got us to Tanahashi and Nemeth. So no notes. Well done, guys.
I thought this is the best Nemeth has looked since he has left WWE, and probably since a good considerable time, maybe like that NXT Braun Breaker feud that he had like 3 or 4 years ago. It's the best match he's had in a very long time. Yeah. And I don't know if it was because it was Ishii, but he definitely felt like he was motivated to be there, and he was wrestling a guy he really wanted to wrestle, and it kind of showed. I don't know how many more matches he's got. Maybe the Tanahashi one is the last one he's got on this little dance routine with New Japan Pro Wrestling. But they had a lineup of guys that they picked from WWE when all those releases. I feel like Nemeth has been the guy down the middle of the road that has worked out probably as they had planned. Maybe it can outkick that. Riddle is the guy that hasn't, and I feel like Ollie is the guy they missed out on, and they might have to course correct. But I don't know how much more time they have on Nemeth. But if he started wrestling like this more consistently, because I felt like he hit a groove, I think this Renaissance is gonna work out for him. But I hadn't seen it until now.
Yeah, I really like Nemeth. I'm one of those people that hasn't watched the WWE since 2003, so I really only have an understanding of the Nemeth or Ziggler character through social media or clips or anything of that nature. I'd always heard, as Venk and Bjorn noted, that he's an incredible seller, and boy, if that accurate. We saw it in the Finlay match, and we saw it here again. I think. Just as a side note, I think if people aren't convinced on him yet, you wait till he wrestles Tanahashi, because that's exactly what Tana needs, is someone that's going to bump for him and make the movement, as Kevin Nash once said. Like, he's going to pretty much do all of that for him, and I think it'll give Tana a sort of a revival. And I think that will be a really key moment for kind of ingratiating Nemeth into the audience's imagination, because I think there's still a little bit of doubt out there from people that have difficulty perhaps detaching him from his WWE presentation. I, for one, love the kind of anachronistic nature of him, that he is like, he looks like a WWE superstar kind of thing. And I think that works when you've paired up against Ishii, and Ishii's out here doing the danger zone or the previously zigzag move. That image, the reason that gets such a pop is because of the contrast, because that Nemeth reflects a different style of wrestling, because he embodies this entertainment element. And I like the character direction he's gone, as almost being like, I'm betting on myself in these matches. I'm going in, I want to prove this guy is like strong style, right? This guy's the New Japan, the Hall of Famer, the guy you raise up as the embodiment of what is ostensibly the golden era of New Japan Pro Wrestling in-ring action. I can go in there, but I'm not going to go in there and have a New Japan style match. I'm going to wrestle my way and prove that I always had it, that prove that yes, I have the showman stuff, but this style is effective. I was a Kent State wrestler. I've embodied this the whole way, and I just fit in different spaces. I think that makes him an interesting character, more so than just I'm trying to ingratiate myself into the style. I'm trying to cosplay as a New Japan Pro Wrestling wrestler. Right. He's a more authentic version of himself, and I don't see him as being that distinct to early Mox, where it's like Mox was like, I'm going to lean into like CZW Mox. I'm going to lean into the old true version of me, because that's who I am. And that's what New Japan allows. And it just means that in this situation, people doubted Mox early too. And I think Nemeth has potential, and I really hope that he gets more of a showcase across time. The crowd reaction was great from coming out. It took a little while to get them through the match, but they came back. I think he has potential as of those, as you mentioned, Jeremy, of those sort of WWE releases. To me, it's about showing that you care. And if you show that you're invested and you care, the New Japan fans will invest back into you. And he's done nothing but show that he wants to be, he wants to work, and he wants to show that he belongs and he should be on top. And I think he's done a great job of that. And this match was, a great step along the way. I really can't wait for that Tanahashi match. I think it's going to be the one that ingratiates him with the audience. So I hope there's more to come post that. I hope it's not the end, because then it will just feel like we've just seen a missed opportunity there. I think he's got more legs in New Japan, to be fair.
Nemeth has always been extraordinarily athletic. We saw that, like you said, the selling, absolutely. What happened with WWE was he stayed there so long, he got historically stale, and there were just no new feuds. He had tagged with everybody, he had wrestled everybody, it was just stale as anything. So having fresh opponents seems to have both invigorated him and brought out some of that. Oh yeah, this guy's actually really good. And it's just that you just saw him at the same stuff over and over. He was there for 10 years, and there's only so much you can do in one company. And others who have. What's that?
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say it's also a missed opportunity, because if you think about the wins above replacement, if someone else is running that place for the last 15 years, then the other sex test that we want to talk about, guys like Nemeth with people who are rehabilitating the work rate and how the style is done over the years, he would have had a renaissance there a long time ago, but he was slotted in a certain place, and that's why he's existing in the sphere that he is now. And I feel like it's almost unfortunate that his first match was with Finlay, because I don't think Finlay was the right opponent to really bring out what Ishii brought out of him in this match, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but I think narratively their intention
It had
was,
to happen.
Yeah, it was like Nemeth is like, you're not respecting this title. They're trying to really get him over as babyface in Japan, where it's like, you're not respecting this title. I will respect this title, and I will wrestle the legends to prove and bring prominence to this belt. So I think that was kind of the story. Again, you're right. You didn't get the opportunity to show out in the way that you would hope.
It was kind of like you get this, but at the cost of this, so we gotta make up that down the way. And
you would get Tana. Exactly. It was meant to get Tana next at Sakura Genesis, which, of course, in Rare Goku, in that space, that would have been the opportunity to be the decorative moment. So, yeah, I have faith in his sort of direction. I think that this was, to me, was like, okay, cool. It feels like he's solid enough, and I do think. I don't like guys that aren't, in there for tours per se. I'm not a big fan of kind of like just sort of coming in for spots. But I do feel like if you're going to ingratiate yourself, this is the way to do it. Hopefully we see more of him. And if not, hopefully he's brought some new eyes to the product.
He is someone that I am now in the back of my head kind of hoping he's committed to the G1. He's just like, there's a fit, there's an electricity to having a couple of Nemeth matches in there that Kirk was like, you know what? Yeah, I really do want to see him go up against Taichi or Goto or just random guys where you're just like, let's do this. Let's just have this match.
That was essential for Mox. That was the key element that ingratiated Mox with the audience. That's why Mox can win a title in this space and be perceived differently to other outsiders, because he committed to New Japan, he committed to a long tour, and he went through that grueling tournament. I think it's essential for anyone that wants to proclaim themselves a New Japan pro wrestler to wear that tracksuit, right? I think a G1 is really essential. So yes, I would love to see him commit to that if it's possible.
I remember hearing Moxley talk about that, and it's interesting as somebody who has the reputation that Moxley does as far as experimentation with pro wrestling and wanting to do everything in pro wrestling. And when Rocky Romero said, we'd like to bring you in for something, great, let's do it. And then they said, well, maybe we'll bring you in for Dominion. Great, let's do it. He said, well, maybe you'd like to do the G1. And Moxley at first said, I don't know. Like the G1 was intimidating to him. He just said, boy, that sounds really hard. And he talked to some people that did. I think it's something that AJ Styles has mentioned, that one of the first things people ask is just like, what was the G1 like? They had so. It is still a badge of honor that to even just to work that tour. So if you get the invite, even guys like Moxley at first are just like, ooh, I don't know, that's sounds pretty tough. But we'll see how that turns out. But we feel confident that there's going to be a 32-man tournament this year, so they have slots to fill. So
hopefully.
IWGP World Heavyweight title. Tetsuya and Naito and Jon Moxley was our last match of the night, of course. And as Venkin said, Mox and NJPW just hits different. It's he does. And I've been likening him a little bit to New Japan's kind of Bruiser Brody of this era as just this rampaging foreigner that the crowd still kind of likes. Which is the big difference. Instead of just being one of the foreign heels to be vanquished, like the crowd actually takes to him. And it's because of that authenticity, like you mentioned there. And he comes off like it means something to him. And he's not over there for the paycheck. He just feels like this is the kind of wrestling that really brings out the best in him. And the crowds respond to that. We saw some of that in this match here. Naito and Moxley. Also fun to me, that Naito's delay tactics that he's done forever since he came back with this character from Mexico work great with the Moxley character. That antsy, he's stalking around like Veta tripped over and said she's like a shark. He's pacing like a shark. Wait, sharks don't pace. He's like swimming like a shark. Veta was terrific tonight on the commentary for the most part, but that was a funny little thing there. But they did say that. It was funny the way he was just kind of pacing back and forth. Let's go. Like, yes, I know you're going to take your pants off. Let's go. Entertaining there. And then there was just some really good work in this match. Like you said earlier, Josh, that Naito was landing on his head a little bit, which always makes me nervous, but he puts everything into his matches. Moxley worked his legs, of course. Naito smashed him in the head with a chair when he went for a tope suicida. So that, again, Moxley is a little bit like old school Manny Fernandez, where if you hit him with a rolled up newspaper, he bleeds a bucket and a half. And we got that. Of course, you saw it. He fell out of the ring after the chair shot and ducked his head under there, and it's like everybody on that side of the building was like, he's gigging now. This is the blood. That's the blood part. So sure enough, came out of there and he hit a gusher. He
would have looked too hard on that cut if he did it himself. I'll tell you that much. That was it.
Oh, but Mox bleeds good there. That's he's not on the Muda scale. He's still a 0.6 on the Muda scale, but very good work for the first 20 minutes right there. They exchanged a Death Rider and Destino. And a second Death Rider for 2 at about the 20-minute call. The match, there were some moments here. I think Naito was supposed to do the Combinacion Cabron and couldn't quite do it. But Charlton covered that intelligently by mentioning, hey, he's been working his legs the whole match. Of course, he's having trouble with that. And it's not that Naito's body is broken down. He's over 40, but it's because he was working the legs. But that's why he needed Chris Charlton out there. And at the end there, it was the whole, like I said, Death Rider Destino was traded. Then he hit a second Death Rider for 2, and Naito battled his way to his feet, was pulling himself up and, using the ropes to hold up, and he got caught with a third Death Rider and won it. I thought it was interesting because that is often how Naito wins his matches, where he will get that Destino out of a counter into something. And when the guy is barely recovering from that, he sinks in the full Destino and wins it. And here he was the victim of that, where he barely survived a Death Rider. But instead of doing 5 moves and coming back to it, Moxley just Death Rider, Death Rider, Death Rider. You will stay down. And finally, he did. The match told a good story. It was very well worked by the two of them. And in the end there, Naito was defeated. Moxley had the title, took the microphone, said, I am not going to hide from the young lions, as he said. And he starts saying, this will be Shooter's final exam. Crowd pops. But then there's a guy sliding into the ring, and it's Ren Narita with his push-up bar. And he clobbers Moxley and says that he wants the next shot. And, of course, the Shooter comes out to kind of run him off. And I did enjoy the line from Moxley is congratulations, you've gone from a young boy to a dead man. So that's going to be the next one. Ren Narita jumps the line in front of Shooter. Way too early to do Mox and Shooter yet. Way too early. That there's so much subtext in that needs to be down the line a little way.
That's Dominion, bro.
Maybe even past that. I'm not even sure.
I think we're getting Resurgence. I think we're getting Ren and Moxley at Resurgence. I think we're getting Shota and Moxley at Dominion, and then we're getting Moxley and whoever his title change is going to be at Forbidden Door.
Maybe, yeah, could be. I mean, there's a lot of options. They have a lot of options.
I am super excited. I felt like Shota and Moxley was the perfect mirror to Sonata and Yoda last year at Dominion, having that young lion with the established IWGP, and we already had Yoda break the wall down, no pun intended, this past week at Sakura Genesis with another title match. So the door's wide open for any of those young guys to challenge for the IWGP title, and I feel like we're going to get it. Shota's going to lose, but he is going to be again on that stage.
And what you can get here is just get the Narita thing makes sense. It's a win. Moxley can win his first defense, and that's what he really needs. And again, it will be an undivided audience. The crowd will want Moxley to beat this guy rather than have somebody from another faction that some people like and other people like Mox. It's going to be screw Narita. We want Moxley to win this one. So he'll go over strong. I feel confident at Resurgence with that one. And then he can move on to other things. But it always helps to get that first defense out of the way without any ambiguity, I think. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, to be fair. I as I said earlier, I was lukewarm initially on the Mox movement, but I think, I can see the potential directions they can go with him in this run, especially pairing him with the young guys. I did enjoy the matchup. I thought this lent sort of into what Naito's strengths are, which are, being sloppy, But that's the nature of Naito. I think with the knees the way they are. But the logic of that match, as you mentioned, with Charlton's framing of he's working the legs, I think it's clever from Moxley to work the legs. I think that makes a lot of sense. It protects Naito in some respects there, and it makes sense for him in terms of even if you think about setting up for the Destino and the difficulty that would be with no legs. I think people are obviously going to make the parallel between, or the comparison between, this Naito match and the Naito match versus Tsuji. The very different framing of that. I think when Naito wrestles the young guys, I've said this many a time, I think he expects them to bring the fight to him. He expects them to come to him. And if they don't, we say he takes them out to deep water, and if they can't swim, they will drown, and he's happy to let them drown in front of him. This is a situation where he's out there for, as you mentioned before, as Vader mentioned, he was out there for shark. So there was no opportunity to do that. It's the fight's 50-50, and going in, I love the idea that we had gotten to a point where anyone could win this, and that kind of it builds an anticipation that's just different. It's like this is consequential. Something's going to happen. It's going to project forward, and we don't know which way they're going to go. We don't. So many times you're watching matchups. If you're following the story, if you're following the traditional booking patterns, you kind of know. You might have a bit of doubt, but you kind of know where they're headed. This one was one of those. It could go either way, and when it has that vibe, it really adds to it. As you mentioned, like he's going to wrestle Ren, that'll feel different because you kind of know. You kind of know what's going to happen there. So you're judging it differently. You're judging it in the context of a match down the line. I'm very curious about this movement because if you're looking at Ren, you say resurgence. I could also see Dontaku because of the house Twitter of it all.
Yeah, true.
They play the best in those spaces, right? I'm curious. I mean, this audience gave a lot in terms of booing Ren and that sort of stuff, but the House of Torture fans and that sort of stuff and the shenanigans, if they would go that route, would play best, obviously, in New Japan, in Japan context. But then my first instinct, and my quick half-baked take is like, they'll go quick. They'll go Ren and then Shota at Resurgence. I was like, pull the brakes. I think I've had a lot of people sort of comment, and it makes perfect sense. Anniversary of the Dominion match, the crowning match where the panty dropper promo, right? Where they became, these Kohai Senpai was at Osaka, was at Dominion.
Yeah.
And to me, I could see the benefit of pushing the Shota versus Mox match there. But just the thing about it is that Shota just doesn't win. Like,
right.
If you want to keep that moment for down the line, it's when Shota overcomes Moxley that's the big moment. Yep. And that's
absolutely, you
can push that. But I struggle to see any situation, and maybe it's just me and my inability to sort of project in the current moving landscape of New Japan Pro Wrestling, the Wrestle Kingdom main event, and I can't see Naito not being in it. I just can't see that. And so I'm like, well, you have to get the belt back onto him before G1, ostensibly, right? Because I don't think he's going to go back-to-back G1s to get to chase it.
It doesn't feel like it, does it? Doesn't feel
like that. Yeah. But there is Forbidden Door. But again, is that the space? There's this New Japan Soul event, which is now becoming very curious on my radar of like just before the G1, a sort of a bigger arena match. It's like, okay, maybe that's the time that they do Mox versus Naito. Naito gets it back, and then we're in the G1. And then the G1, I would love to see Moxley put his, as former champ. I think if you're going to win the title, if you're going to be the IWGP champion, I think you should be in the G1 the year you win it. I think that would be really endorsing that. And I would love the idea that guys like Shota, all the young guys that Mox has vanquished in this short run, they're all entering the G1 trying to get to Naito, including Mox. They're all trying to get that Wrestle Kingdom main event. And then we can really hype up the G1 as being that gets that build, because now it's about all of these guys have a reason for chasing that spot. And also the G1, if Mox is in it, you can get back those wins. A guy like Ren Narita can steal one on Mox in a G1 context. He's protected in that space, and it's a good banana peel for Mox. So I just feel like they're gonna have to find a way. I don't know how they're gonna do it. But and that's what's exciting about it. It's like Mox has done this. Now it puts a whole new lens on all of these projections that I and Dave had at WeWorkStiff. We're talking about LIJ on top. That's the story. That's the story of this year. LIJ and War Dogs is the B-side narrative. Those things can still happen. But now we've got another key narrative of a different champion on top who seems to be going I'm versus the young guys. And I do, Stephen, I do like your take on the Bruiser Brody. I felt the very end of this match was very Stan Hansen, where he's doing the bullhorn and he's doing the full lariat to set up the thing. I was like,
yeah, true.
I was like, there was a beautiful like that, but that idea, both of those guys fit in this context where it's like foreigners that ingratiate themselves within the Japanese audience, ingratiate themselves in Japanese pro wrestling. I think Mox, that's the last great sort of land to conquer. He's climbed this mountain, but now he's at the top of the mountain. I think he can see the lands of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And his job is to, I think, really seal his legacy in that space. And I think, AEW has got, let's be real, they've got probably the most stacked men's roster that's ever existed on the face of the planet.
Yeah.
Right? So you can afford Moxley to go over here.
To fuck off and
I think he needs to, and I don't take that lightly. I understand AEW fans will want.
No, I'm with you. Like
he needs to. If he's going to be the champion, it's like you're the face of the company now, and with that comes the responsibility to carry the company.
You have to drop anchors.
Exactly.
And also AEW, because of that stacked roster, is in a unique position to actually freshen up Moxley by having him be away for a while. So it's the classic, like, how can we miss you if you never go away, right? So if he does do a 6-month run where he's mostly in Japan or on New Japan shows in the US, yes, the internet's different now. The fans still see it. I understand all that. It's not like the territory date. Nothing's like the territory dates where guys would just actually go away. But by the time he comes back full time to AEW after a run in New Japan, having been the IWGP champion, it'll feel a little fresher. It'll feel a little, oh, Mox is back, and now things have had a few months to change around, and there's some fresh spots for him. You don't always get a chance to do that with a major star like Mox, but when you have this much talent, you have plenty to keep other people busy, and then bring him back into the mix. So this can benefit everyone if done correctly.
He's off TV. He's not on Dynasty. His dance card is almost exclusively New Japan Pro Wrestling for the foreseeable future, and he can bring that a copy of the IWGP title if you really need to AEW and have him defend the title against Lance Archer or a couple other people, and finally get that pin against Archer that he never got with the last man standing match that they did a whole long time ago. There's opportunity and options here, but what I also really want to talk about is Shota. So he's gifted this title shot to Moxley. There's no struggle there. There's no overcoming. Yeah. What needs to happen is he loses this match, if it happens at all.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I've been on this train for a while, Steven, and you know this. He's the guy to be the first guy to win the IWGP title. And he needs to beat it off the guy that beats Moxley for it. And that is part of his climb and ascend up the top of the thing. And then when he gets to the point and he's the champion, Moxley can come challenge him and he beats Moxley if they don't have that overcome obstacle of Moxley and him before the title. One of these things that I was thinking about is who's the guy that is the obstacle, and this came up from the WeWorkStiff, and then Sonata is the guy that Yota Tsuji has to beat if he's really going to ascend and have that opportunity to beat Naito. There's that gatekeeper wrestler that you have to get through, and which the fan then legitimize you in the eyes of being a contender against the true final boss to steal another thing. So when you're thinking about Shota, who is the final boss? Is Moxley the final boss, or is Moxley helping him get to the final boss?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mentioned before about Naito likes to bring people out to deep water and let them drown. He dragged Shota out to deep water, went back home, made a sandwich, and Shota drowned when they wrestled last time. And everyone doubted Shota at that moment of maybe he doesn't have it, right? And I think there is potential there that Naito may be that person, perhaps. Who knows? I'm not sure. It could be. We don't know.
He could be for a lot of those young Reiwa. He could be for all of them.
He could be
the guy. There's nobody else at that level in New Japan right now.
Yeah, and I think, and if you're tying Mox into Naito in this respect, where Mox beats Naito, but Naito beats Mox eventually, then instead of the third being a third match, maybe Shota finally steps up and says, "Enough of this. I'm going to do what you couldn't."
Right.
there's a lot. That's why I keep saying there's so many moving parts. With once you entered Mox into it, chaos ensues because it's all the traditional patterns and the projections that we may have are kind of like now we're in a different world, and so it is fascinating where Shota plays because you're right. This is good old fashioned top level nepo baby stuff. He's just gifted an opportunity, right?
I'm a huge fan of chaos.
Yeah.
Every so often, just bring chaos into a stable situation and just see what happens.
Yeah, because now it's like, okay, well, I want to give you a final test. It's like it still feels you're protected. We talked about it on our show. We just think Shota needs his innocence lost. He just needs to feel like that whatever the structures that have held him something needs to break. I don't say he needs to go bad. I just think it's a moment to realize that when he's at his best is what we saw tonight with Jack Perry in that moment where the switch was flicked, or we saw against Ospreay when he went full into that space. People will go with you, but sometimes you have to be an ace, you have to do acely things, and sometimes that calls on violence. They will go with you if they believe that's in the best interest of you're fighting for them. And I just think that he's saying I want to be like Moxley without ever reflecting anything that Moxley actually does.
Right.
And I think that there's something to that story. But yeah, now that Moxley's the champion, I know a lot of people. I'm sure Naito fans are taking this well. Oh my god, this was meant to be the run. This was meant to be the run. We're going to get the big run. Don't worry, people. Naito always wins.
He'll be fine.
He'll be fine. He's always fine.
You brought it up. They have to sell tickets at the Tokyo Dome, and Naito sells more tickets in that company than anybody else in Japan. And they absolutely could have Moxley in the main event of a Wrestle Kingdom, but only if he's in there with somebody like Naito. And they used to have a couple guys like Naito, Okada, and Okada's gone now. That's not gonna happen, and that way. And so, like you mentioned, Josh, I think that Naito either has to be the champion going into Wrestle Kingdom, or they're going to have to put him over in the JE. They got to get him there because he's the guy that's going to sell the tickets.
And the story needs him to put someone over.
Yeah. So and he'll get there. Like Naito's not. This is not them moving Naito out of the thing. They're just repositioning the pieces here. He's still absolutely the main event guy, and part of all this is to try to build up more of them because they used to have several guys they could put in the Tokyo Dome main event and make it work, and now they got one. Now they got one, and so that he'll be there. He'll be there. I am very curious. He's either got to get the G1 win or he's got to get the title back. That's all there is to it. But he's going to be involved in that Tokyo Dome main event because that's who sells them. And you've seen it. I mean, the Naito on top in a title match sells more tickets than other events do, and other people in that spot. And for a company again that does not have the huge television contracts, that this business is based on merchandise, and both merchandise and ticket sales. And Naito moves both of those things. So Naito fans, your boy's fine.
You'll be fine.
And I understand that people, just as an aside, that people are the major criticism of this will be, they're going to take the belt away for 3 months from Japan. We're not going to get to see it. I understand that positioning. I understand where that people are coming from because I once held that fear. But you look at the schedule, you look at how it's set up, and you say, okay, well, the best Super Juniors is going to take up a month of this, right? So they're not going to put a title defense in these spaces. The best Super Junior final was at Dominion, so it's not even a best Super Junior final night that we would used to have title matches on before. So it's a completely different schedule and a different landscape. You've got another US-based show that's going to be happening. So all of these things mean what? You may have 1 or 2 left appearances of a guy in the period. Yeah. I think that's an overblown sort of position. If Mox holds the title for the whole run, okay, then we'll have a discussion. But if he does, I'm pretty confident he'll be there, right?
Yeah.
As long as Naito's in the company, as long as he's, at the top, he's chasing, they'll be fine. And I think this is, in many ways, has really reinvigorated a lot for people like me and for fans like me, just that ability to start speculating on all the fresh possibilities. And that to me can't be seen as a negative in a lot of respects. I understand different for different sake. No, this has narrative. This makes narrative sense. Yeah. And the focus is building up the young guys. To me, we've been asking for this. Everyone out there, all of you who've been down on New Japan have been asking for the elevation of young guys.
Well, here we are.
Here we are, and
Here
maybe
we are.
here we are, and okay, it's not Naito doing it. That's fine because Naito will eventually do it for the guy. But we have a lot of other guys we need to build up, and I think Moxley playing that role, he's done nothing but show deference in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I have faith in him in this space, and I'm excited about his spot at the top, and I think it's well deserved. To be fair, I think that we said as much. I would be down on other people potentially getting this role, but not Jon Moxley. I think for New Japan fans, he has been someone who has been advocating for our promotion that we follow for a long time. And has been pushing a style and a philosophy, even in integrating that into the BCC stuff. Like there's so much of what he does that is so New Japan coded, and that's why he hits different in New Japan, because he is a New Japan guy. He just happens to work at AEW.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been saying there's another one, by the way. Please, if anybody is listening, please put Claudio in the G1. Please, let's get Claudio Castagnoli in those. Let's see those matches. I want to see
your monthly reminder.
I know it. I'm beating the drum.
Continue.
I'm gonna annoy him into it, and so they just do it to shut me up. All right,
did it.
Well, we did. Hey guys, terrific show tonight. Really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun watching this wrestling tonight. And I just mentioned we have a lot of interesting possibilities.
Oh, I thought you were talking about our show. Yes, Windy City was great.
Hey, this show was great.
Put us over as well. Put us over as well.
Oh,
Everything was great. Bunch of great shows.
Windy City Riot was a terrific show. We have a lot of possibilities going forward. And Josh, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing your thoughts on this. And like you said, the WeWorkStiff Club. It's always fun to hear these different perspectives on these shows, and really enjoyed the talk. Thank you for coming on.
I really appreciate it, fellas. It's we did it in under 2 hours, so that's incredible for me. It's incredible brevity. Yeah, you're not going to get.
We do it live, pal.
Yeah. Don't expect if you're out there and you're curious about WeWorkStiff and checking us out on Spotify, WeWorkStiff. You're not going to get something under 2 hours, unfortunately. I apologize. We go long, New Japan main event style, but I do very much appreciate the invite. I said it's great to be able to have a forum to talk about this the way that I sort of like to engage, and realize that there's so many like minds that just the framing might be different, but I think we have very similar philosophies about what we're interested in and what we like. And storytelling and in-ring work and all that stuff can coexist, people. It can. And we've proven it here again tonight. So thank you very much. And hopefully all of the listeners and viewers enjoyed the show, because I certainly did.
Yeah, I did too. And let's do some more crossovers in the future. I mean, that's there's no reason we can't help each other out here. There's plenty of room in this space for that type of thing.
That's right.
Let's make like Moxley and whisper to our guy, and then take it home and put our hands in the air with the gun symbol.
All right. Well, with that in mind, we will be back on our regular spot on Thursday, and we'll be talking about the show from Taiwan. We've got that coming up as well. So all that's coming up this weekend. We'll have new never open weight 6-man tag champions. I'm sure you can barely eat, sleep, or breathe until we know who those are. So with that in mind, for Josh from WeWorkStiff, Jeremy Finestone.
Thank you so much, Josh.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for watching and listening to Speaking of Strong Style. We'll be talking to you again very soon.